Okay, so and a couple of references, right? Water freezes at 0 Celsius. That is 32 Fahrenheit. That's the equivalent. Okay. Water boils at 100 Celsius. That is 212 Fahrenheit. And this one, I always memorize this one. I remember this from high school. So 28. If you flip 28 Celsius, you get 82 Fahrenheit. It just happens to be the case. There is no pattern. You will see that it's not. There's a formula you got to use. But one thing I can tell you is that for the almost in general, Celsius is a lower number than the Fahrenheit equivalent, right? That I can guarantee you. There are a few exceptions, as you can tell. And remember, I'm boxing things in here, right? So it is on your formula sheet. I'm fairly confident. I'm just going to see if it's there. The only thing is, let's say you don't bring it or whatever, you forget it. It is there. I'm just going to block you for 1 second, okay? Temperature conversions, those formulas are there. I still encourage you to copy them. They may look a little different. So if you want to convert Celsius, right, and if you want to turn it into Fahrenheit, we got to use this formula, okay? If we are using, if you want to go from Fahrenheit to Celsius, so there's going to be problems here where I'm going to ask you, you know, is this temperature what you want it to be, right? The recipe calls for this. Preheat your oven to, you know, 375 Fahrenheit, as you will see underneath here. What would that be in Celsius, right? Like, let's say your oven only has Celsius. Okay, so write those formulas down, and then the first problem right away there. Okay, Mr. D's baking a cake which asks to preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. What is this in Celsius? So we're gonna calculate that. And if you know what you're doing and how it's done, it's an easy mark or two, right? All you do have to do is plug it in. I used to do Kelvin, right? Kelvin is also a temperature scale. Well, but it's really just Celsius and Fahrenheit that they want us to teach you. Okay. So while you're writing this down, nowadays it's not something that we would necessarily calculate. It's just something that we ask Google to find out for us, right? But I think it's still a skill to use a formula. That's what the skill that they're after here. So before we answer this, okay, I'm going to tell you up here, you know how it says calculator next to the formula? I will, for those, some of you might appreciate this, right? How do you type that into your calculator? And it may differ based on what kind of calculator you have, okay? But if you're working with this formula here, I would say go 9 divided by 5, right? So it's 9 divided by 5, and then you multiply it by C. Right? So 9 divided by 5 times C, whatever the Celsius is that they're giving you. Press the equal button, right? And then you take your answer and you add 32 to it. That's how I would do it if I were you. right? So, and I'll show you that in a bit. What if you have to use this one? If you're going from Fahrenheit to Celsius, that means that they would have to give you this value here. That's what, this is a placeholder, right? So here you would go 5 divided by 9. Notice how it's flipped, right? Actually, sorry, backtrack. I'm doing too many things at the same time here. This is different. I would use brackets, the brackets first. So you go F minus 32. Then you press the equal button, right? Then you take your answer, right? This is going to give you an answer. And you're going to multiply that by 5 and divide it by 9. Answer times 5 divided by 9. This is just an aside, that's take it or leave it, right? If you don't like it, throw it out, right? So don't copy this second question down just yet. Leave yourself some space. Just the Mr. D is baking, right? That's all you're doing. What is this in Celsius? So basically what the question is asking is, it's saying, hey, 375 degrees Fahrenheit, what would that be in degrees Celsius, right? So you're going from Fahrenheit to Celsius. That's basically what you're doing. So you got to use this one here. You're going from so and on your study sheet, I would have this on top of the formula. It's like, hey, if you're going from Fahrenheit to Celsius, you're using this guy. Okay, so let's plug it in. Celsius is equal to 5 over 9, right? Make sure the bracket is there. F, which is 375 minus 32. And you can just go equals right next to it and just go 5 over 9. I'm going to find out what this is. So if you subtract it in your calculator, you get that. Okay, so everybody now use your calculator wants to figure out what this is, right? So you'd go this times 5 divided by 9, right? The key is that you're going to multiply these two, and you're always going to divide by what's in front. So I had a good question, right? Like, remember how area, don't copy this down, I'm just going to do it on the side, is base times height divided by 2. Your formula sheet shows it as 1/2 base times height, like that. And these are exactly the same thing. Whenever you have like a fraction in front like this, you're dividing your answer by 2 or by 3 or whatever happens to be here. Just remember that. So I'm going to erase this because I don't want you to copy this. Just a reminder. Okay, so go 5 times 543, or 543 times 5 divided by 9, just like this. Right, and you hit equal, you get 301.67. Wait a minute. Oh, I did 543, see? That's why it's good to have a calculator with 2 lines. 190.56. And we will always do round it to 2 decimals, and this is Celsius now. Okay, you got to make sure you put the Celsius next to it. And in general, this should be a lower number than what you started with, right? So 375 Fahrenheit is the exact same thing as saying 190.56 Celsius. All right, let's do another one. And I hope you start adding stuff to your study sheets, right? Satvinder is planning a trip to Phoenix, and the forecast shows 32 degrees Celsius for the week. What is this in Fahrenheit? All right. So here, they're giving you Celsius, so 32 Celsius. What is this in Fahrenheit? That's basically what this question is asking. So you're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit, right? Which one do you have to use? Let's go up here. You're using this one, Celsius to Fahrenheit. You're using this formula right here. So I'm going to do that on the side. So Celsius is 9/5 Celsius plus 32. Sorry. This should be a Fahrenheit here. I bet. Fahrenheit is that. So Fahrenheit, 9/5. And you put that in brackets, right? Whatever the Celsius is, which is 32, put that in brackets, plus 32. So you first figure out what this is. Basically, where the bracket is, that happens first. So you're going to go 9 times 32 divided by 5. Or 9 divided by 5 times 32. That's what both are going to give you the same answer. So you're going to get 57.6 plus 32. So basically take your answer and just go plus 32. So that's 89.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know if you ever look at like when they have those wildfires in the States, in California, they'll say the forecast calls for 100 degrees plus temperatures. That is hotter than 32 degrees Celsius. So we know that 32 is pretty warm, right? When you're in the 30s, it's pretty warm. So in the States, they often have like 100 or more degrees Fahrenheit for weeks on end, especially down in Phoenix, California, right? Like those areas there. It gets really warm. Texas. So you have an idea now, 32 is about almost 90 Fahrenheit. Okay. So we've done one example of each. So if you want to have, on your study sheets, like, hey, this is how you convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, you write this down right next to it as an example. And then this is how you go from Celsius to Fahrenheit. You have your formula, and then you have an example right next to it. Okay. So at this point, measurement can easily take up 2 to 3 of your squares, if not 4. If you want to use 4 squares or rectangles for it in your study sheet, go for it. So I'm going to ask you to try the following. Notice that I have negatives there. Might throw you off. That's okay. I basically want to get a sense of like, are you comfortable converting? Okay. So convert the following, write it down, and then try them all, okay? So let's say we give you about 2 minutes for each. So it'll be 8 minutes, more or less. I know it's tempting to just come up with an answer, right? It's like, here's the answer, right? That'd be great. But we know that we all make mistakes, including myself, right? So if you're showing me what you typed in before you come up with the answer, then at least you get partial marks if you make a mistake, okay? Because if it's way off, I have no idea what you've done. I don't even know if you picked the right formula, right? So the first step would be to write down the formula perhaps with the right substitutions, right? So you're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So that means that I need this one right here. Fahrenheit is 9/5 Celsius. So you can just right away put the 24 in there. I'm fine with that. And then you go plus 32. So just do one line like that before you type in. That'd be my suggestion. I would say even further, figure out what the 9 times 24 divided by 5 is. That's 43.2 plus 32 like that. And then come up with the answer here. And that's 75.2 degrees Fahrenheit. If that's not there, then you need to make sure you add the units, okay? Here you're going from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So Celsius is 5/9 Fahrenheit, which is 85, right? Plus 32. No, I'm mixing it up right now. I know it. I just caught myself. There it is. Sorry. Just caught myself. It's the 85 minus 32. That's what goes in here, right? So the 85, it's substituting the Fahrenheit, right? And then one more line would be 5/9, and figure out what this is. That's 53, and then come up with the final answer, right? So it'd be 5 times 53 divided by 9, and that's 29 point. And here you do have more than one decimal, so you write down 2 decimals minimum, okay? And there we go. And then the negatives, right? We're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit again. So here you have to be careful, watch carefully. So I put a star there, have a negative example on your study sheet. We usually don't like negative examples except for this one, right? Haha, very funny. So negative 14, so we write down 9/5, and then in here you'd put negative 14. But if you have a decent calculator, it will be fine. So what I would say here is you do that. 9 times negative 14, don't drop the negative, divided by 5. You get negative 25.2 plus 32, right? So then you take your answer and just add 32 to it, and you get 6.8. So 6.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. What about this one? Have you looked at boots? The temperature when you buy winter boots? It says minus 40 Fahrenheit, minus 40 Celsius. I don't know if you ever noticed that. But yeah, that's the one odd thing about Fahrenheit and Celsius, that at the bottom end, they are the same. So, but let's check it out. So I'm going to use the same formula as I had before, because it happens to ask me to do the same thing in terms of converting to, right? 5/9, careful here, minus 40 minus 32. And I don't know if you remember adding integers in grade 9, but if you have negatives, you're adding negatives, you're adding them up. But if you don't remember that, you have your handy dandy calculator, right? So minus 40 minus 32, that's minus 72. So don't drop the negative, right? So then I'm going to go 5 times negative 72. So I'm just going to take that answer. I'm going to multiply it by 5 and divide it by 9. And you get negative 40 degrees Celsius. So oddly enough, negative 40 Fahrenheit is also negative 40 Celsius. So they kind of meet there. So if you see boots that say that, both of them, it's like, oh, Fahrenheit, Celsius, they're the same. It's like, no, it's only when it gets down to that point. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. Let's write down one more word problem here, because you need to answer, not just convert here. Okay, so write down that word problem. Meat needs to be aged. So a lot of the steaks or whatever, you age it, it hangs in a fridge at a controlled temperature. Sometimes sometimes days, and there are certain butchers that will keep it there for weeks. The longer it ages, the more tender the meat becomes. I don't know if you knew that, but they don't just slaughter the cows, for example, and just sell the meat right away. It has to hang there, it has to age for a bit. And it needs to be aged between 34 Fahrenheit and 36 Fahrenheit. So anywhere in between, including those numbers, is fine. Okay. Amrinder checks the temperature of the fridge and it shows 4 degrees Celsius. Is it a safe temperature? Is this a safe temperature? And so obviously this question isn't explicitly asking you, meaning like saying it out loud, convert, but it stands to reason that, right, you have Celsius and Fahrenheit. It's like having inches and centimeters, right? You need to convert them so that you have them both in the same units. So you have choices to make. You can convert the 4 Celsius to Fahrenheit and then see if it fits between the limits, or you convert each of the limits to Celsius, which is obviously a lot more work. We're going to convert the Celsius to Fahrenheit, so let's go ahead and do that. Some of you are still writing it down, so go ahead and finish writing it, and then maybe even give it a try. All right. Here we go. So basically, convert 4 Celsius to Fahrenheit, then answer question, right? So we want Fahrenheit is equal to 9/5 Celsius, which is the 4, plus 32. One more line, right? You go 9 times 4 divided by 5. That's 7.2 plus 32. Show your work somehow, right? And that's 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit, right? This is not safe, not a safe temperature, since the highest can only be 36 Fahrenheit. Right? We found out that the actual temperature is 39. The highest you are allowed to be at, according to this, is 36. So you're over that, making it unsafe. Okay. I think we're good now. I had another example, but I'm just going to leave it. So what I'm going to ask you to do instead now, And I'm not sure if you have your chapter 4 booklets